So what we have here is we have two different kinds of cables. We have audio cables and we have banana plug cables, which are actually control voltage cables. Right? So what we like to do in terms of setup, so that we have a certain level of consistency, is we like to set a couple of things. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 oscillators, right? Or generators, as they're called here, right? Because they were called function generators when they were standalone units like this, right? Function generator. So you could make sounds out of that, right? And it actually has an output that goes over to the patch bay. So you could take the sounds from there and use them, not on the piece that's due next week, which I forgot to mention in class for everybody else, but I'll send an email. So the second musique concrète piece is due next week. So we also have a mixer here, and another mixer here, and another mixer here, which allows us to take various signals and combine them without having them interact with each other. If you patch two things into the same input, you're going to wind up having the sum and the difference as well as the two original signals. So the mixers are really helpful for us in terms of that. So what I like to do is to take 1 and 3 as well as 4 through 6 and send them to the outputs that go over to the mixer. So out 1 and out 2. So plug that here, plug this guy here, and now anything that I plug into any of these 6 inputs will be controllable with the knobs, but they will automatically go out to those places. So over here, we want to make sure that the Buchla faders are up, that our master is up, and that we are on line in, and that we have our trims up at about 10 o'clock. Make sure that the mute all is off and that we've got some level there. Make sure we're here. Make sure we got level here, and we should be good, right? This is assigned to left and right. Yeah. So if I take and put a signal out of one of these oscillators and go directly into one of the inputs here, I should be able to get a signal over there. Well, it's kind of low, so maybe my trim needs to be up, or maybe any number of places need to be up. So, gotta get you a dolly.
I know.
So here you've got control of the frequency, and here you've got control of the intensity. Right? So you can see things here on the oscilloscope. Well, I could actually take the output of another oscillator, right? Make sure that it's on low oscillation, and not supposed to be doing that.
It's rated modulated.
That's very strange. Okay, let's do this the other way then. And now if we take the output of this oscillator and put it into the frequency modulation input of this oscillator and turn it way down, we can get it to actually do frequency modulation, right, as we had done over there. And in this case, this frequency will actually change the speed of the frequency modulation. While this frequency modulation knob will actually change how far away from the original frequency we go. Gee, that sounds familiar.
It's a really cool shape on the oscillator too.
So here you notice it's doing this. And we wind up adding sidebands in. Right, nothing but frequency modulation. Simple, 2 oscillators, right?
That's dope.
Now, we can change them so that we have a sawtooth and a sine on each oscillator here.
That's cool.
Well, gee, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually change this, the frequency? It's really hard for me to get any kind of a melody with that. So maybe what I could do is actually have some sort of control voltage that would change that for me.
On the keyboard?
So if I put this in here and I flip the switch here, I could get control voltage coming out of the keyboard, right? And now
Whoa.
Nice.
How does that work?
You're mapping like each key individually
Yeah.
to a different frequency? Okay.
So you would tune the, so if you wanted to set up like a keyboard, you would tune it.
Yeah, like a
Right.
semitone.
right, you can go here, all of the frequencies are there, but the nice thing about this is that you can actually,
Map.
so they don't have to be sequential, which is what you have over here. That was one of the things that Subotnick really wanted to make sure would be true, is that he didn't want people to approach this instrument as they approach that instrument. He didn't want them to think about all of the things that are available over there being available here. He didn't want them to create the music that you would create with a keyboard over here. So this gave you options. And of course, you know, some people are going to set it up. Oh, let's see, that's a C and this is a D and that's an E, right? Yeah, some people will do that, but this gives you options to do lots of different things.
That's cool.
Right.
Well, it sounds like some of the stuff we
Sound
see.
familiar?
Yeah.
That's it. The frequency's a little wrong, but
How does this work? Are you like completing a circuit with your finger?
yeah, what's happening is you've got this bar that runs across the top,
Yeah.
right? And you notice that each of those come down
And then up in the
and
center.
join and then go up through the center. And then you've got a dot here, which is actually a piece of wire on the other end, on the other side. And that has 2 pieces that are coming down like that. They're not touching each other
Yeah.
unless you put your finger there, in which case they are touching each other. And then you can do that. So you could also change the shape of the sound itself, right? And change the actual modulation back to a sine. Now, instead of using this as frequency modulation, what I could do is I could actually take this oscillator and go over to another input. And now I've got this other frequency happening. And then I could make it so that I've got, I don't want to use this guy because
It's like giving me chills.
Are those doing that?
Yeah.
Huh? I don't know.
Is that
Oh.
super low coming from this?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's that. This is this.
Freaking good.
So which one is the sound source? Or
This is the low sound that you're hearing, and this
What is
is
that
the
sound?
high sound.
so
The high sound is currently controllable from here,
Okay.
and the other one is staying permanent,
Okay.
right? But what I could do is I could take that and actually have it come from a different row down here, right? And so now,
Oh, yeah.
if I flip this switch up so that it's on external, right? Always follow the lines. Now I would be able to,
Whoa. Oh, it's so deep.
That's dirty.
and I'm going to turn this other
It
guy
must be coming from that.
off just so we only hear this.
This is polyphonic. Completely polyphonic.
Yeah, you have two sounds happening. at the
Cause
same
you could
time.
have more than that
They're
You
only
can't
two
like
rows.
play a chord.
though.
Well, you can map to a.
Well, can you map
chord.
things to the row above that?
Like
Is
a
that
major
another?
major third.
This?
Yeah.
No,
So what does that up there do?
you'll see.
EQ.
Be patient.
I have faith in the process.
So you have a bass in the second row.
That's it.
Is that sub over there hooked up? Is that
Yeah,
sub?
it is. It is.
So that's where
Relax.
that's coming from.
That's cool.
So you have two voices. Dope.
Right.
That's
So
so cool.
So I could have one line going up, one line going down at the same time. I can do whatever I want with them, right? Choose. And I can always go back to just.
So only that one's changing.
Wait, what is this?
I flip the switch back, so this one is now controlled internally by this knob,
Okay.
right? So this knob is controlling the frequency of this oscillator.
Mm-hmm.
So the low frequency that you hear is just one static frequency.
Okay, it doesn't change. Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
Even though
Got
this
it.
is still plugged in,
I see.
I switched it so now this knob is controlling that frequency.
Okay. So, but when it's an external.
But when I
source,
flip it up to
it's gonna be in
external,
this row. So whatever you map it here. Right?
so now this, and you call it mapping, but
Okay.
yeah, it's what you would call mapping, but it's not, wasn't called mapping back then. Right?
Okay.
What did they call it back then?
I'm going to turn to no. So you've got the ability to do both of those. Now the interesting thing that you could do is maybe I want to actually be able to change all of those notes so that they all change together, right, as a sequence. So in other words, I'm adding extra voltage to each one. Well, how would I do that? Well, I have a control voltage processor. So if I, instead of coming and going directly from here to there, what I'm going to do is get a longer cable. And I'm going to take the output from this, and I'm going to go there. And now I have the ability to change this independently, right? And I can have this be on internal, right? So now only this is going to affect it. Or I can have it be on external, and in that case, I can, sorry for the pain, use this now to come over and have that be the external. Right? So I have this one external sound that's going in here, right? And I'm using mostly external, but some internal. And so I can change. Let me get rid of the other one so you don't hear the top. Right, if I come up to more internal, right, so I can scale the whole thing. They keep the same basic relationship,
But it's different.
because I'm adding extra voltage to it. So I still have that sequence, but I'm able to move the sequence up or down.
Okay. Got it.
That makes sense.
But can you do like make the make the both, you know, the two voices go up and down together?
Could I make the two voices both go
Yeah,
up and
like
down together?
This one, this row, and then this row together, and
You mean so that they both
going up and down.
effectively modulate at
Yeah.
the same time? Yeah, but I would wind up doing it with two different processors.
Okay.
The reason is that once I put that process into here,
Mhm.
I'm now changing it with this, but if I put the other one in there also, they're going to combine,
Okay.
right? Because that's what it does, is it's a processor, it does combination as well.
Right.
But I have another processor somewhere. Oh, look, there's one right here. So instead of going from here up to there, I could take the output of this guy and come from this output up here. And I can now take, and I'm going to do this with two guys so that you don't lose track of what's going on, right? And I'm just going to patch them together. I should do it this way. And now I'm going to put that input, whoops, into there. And so now this cable right? And I can right, and if I turn this guy back, let me see what I put
Oh yeah, you got two
here.
voices.
So somebody, I mean, if you do this at the same time that you're changing both of these, somebody play those for me?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
So sick.
They're like,
Right, so you're able to manipulate those in that way. Now the other thing that I could do is I could actually combine signals. What if I took this signal, right, which is coming from the top row, and it goes up here in order to control this oscillator? What if I added this in over here so it became part of this processor as well? So right, so I'm actually using part of this, right, which is coming in here. Now it's that almost predominantly. Right? I can add and scale it here, but I can also use the other control voltage that's coming in over here. I can combine them together in some mix, but also scaling them individually. So if I just go from the externals, right, so now it's all this one, and now it's all this one, right? So you're able to then manipulate that and scale that. Right, so you got a couple different ways you can process those voltages. But the problem with this is that it's all just kind of like, it doesn't change. There's no what?
Frequency modulation.
No, I can get frequency modulation. I showed you that at the beginning. What do you mean LFO?
Like variations in the timbre or the.
Well, there is variation in the timbre.
Oh, intensity? Oh,
right. Oh, and look, I could actually change that so that if I had a control voltage that came from
and change the waveform?
here and went over there, and actually that's so low, let's go with the other one, for instance. So that we're actually getting right, so it's changing both. But what would be interesting is if we had some sort of shape to the sound, right? It's just, and what do we call that shape?
The waveform?
No, it's like dynamics.
Dynamics,
Intensity? Envelope?
envelope, right? We got to have an envelope. How do we get an envelope? Well, let's turn off one of these guys, right? So we only have the one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the envelope by controlling what? What controls the envelope?
ADSL? Oh, well. What control?
When you change the envelope, what are you changing?
Volume.
Are you changing the frequency? No.
No.
You're changing the volume, right?
Right.
So in order to change the volume, I need what?
A volume knob.
I need a voltage controlled amplifier, right? So how am I going to get a voltage controlled amplifier? Instead of actually going directly here with that signal, I'm going to take that signal, I'm going to stick it over here into the input of that unit, voltage controlled amplifier, and I'm going to take the output of that and go into the same place that I had it before. Right? And now I can turn this all the way up and I'll have the same that I had before, right? However, if I turn this all the way down, I could use a control voltage to open and close or to control the volume knob effectively. Well, how do I do that? Well, I could take a control voltage out of the dual attack generator and go into the input of the control voltage on the voltage controlled amplifier. Excuse me. And then I could take a trigger from here and put the trigger into the trigger input, and now I would be able to have
That's a long attack.
So I have control of the attack, the decay, and the note duration
sustain, which is, or release.
But it's being controlled by my finger. As long as I keep it there, I'm going to have duration.
Oh, that's a release.
Right?
Okay.
Because the switch is on controlled by trigger length. So this is supplying a trigger, and if I flip over here, I can hold it forever, but it's going to cut off based on the duration
Okay.
that's set here.
Gotcha. But it's still, yeah. So that's 5 seconds means? Or level 5?
It's, I think it's 5 seconds actually.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow. Around that, yeah.
Why does the pitch change when the duration's up?
Because this guy is old.
Oh.
Because it was never really stable, right? As Mort said, you know, he would change things. The next day he would come in, he would leave it overnight, he'd come in the next day, and it would be different, right? Because things fluctuated a little bit. Right? So if the switch is in the controlled by trigger length, it's controlled by here, right? And the attack is still going to be whatever you set, right? So if I set it as a very short, right? And if I set the decay time very short, and I go to internal and make that really short,
Oh, cool. That's sick. It's like water droplets. Drip City. Drip City.
Drip City.
right? If I turn this all the way up, I get the sound all the time, but then whenever I touch a note, it's like an accent, right? So I have the sound all the time, but accents, right? So as long as I bring that all the way down, I then get whatever I got set down here, right? Well, that's kind of cool. It'd be interesting though if I could actually maybe control one of those with something else that would just not cause me to have to make every sound. Right? What if I were able to use a sequencer of some sort? Well, I have a sequencer here, and I can make it run by using the all pulses out and going into the input here, make sure that this is on the internal, and now it sequences through whatever number I have set here on the number of increments, and it now will actually send out control voltages based on whatever my knobs are set at. Well, if I have everything set at nothing, as low as it'll go, okay, so I have output A, and there's two of them. That corresponds to this row. I have output B, there are two of them. They correspond to this row. And output C, they correspond to this row. Well, if I take a signal and I come out of, for instance, row A, and I go into this control voltage input here, right? I'm going to take this output, and I don't hear much of anything because they're all the same, right? But I still have control here. And notice that this stays on whatever the last one was, right? Well, if I now change some of these,
That's just the frequency?
Oh, wow.
No way. That's so cool.
So can I have a little more volume over there?
Yeah. Wait, so does it only do the amount of steps that you have the knobs turned up for?
Where's that?
Does that number.
Oh, I see.
Oh.
Right? So that's pretty cool.
That's so disgusting. I'm missing a light though.
Well, we're trying to get new light bulbs, and it's like
Are they like super specific or something?
they're super difficult to find.
Yeah.
We finally found somebody who has 5 of them, and they will have 12, but they're going to send us them 5 first so we can actually replace this. And the caps are even harder to find.
Couldn't you just make the caps?
Maybe.
Like a
Like a
rat
3D
tape.
print?
Lord rat
Yeah.
tape.
Yeah.
So it's actually getting its frequencies now, or its control voltage is being set. The frequency is being set by this control voltage. It's the same over here, right? Those are identical. There's 2 different A outputs. Well, I could change it because I still have the output from here that goes here, that then comes down and goes in here, right? So both of those voltages are going in. Well, I could add a little extra voltage here, right? So I could scale that. But I also have voltage going from here. Right, so when I'm here, the control voltage from here is going in here, it's being added and then going into here, right? The output of here goes in there. So I have both of these actually combined, mostly the blue one though. Right? So that's scaling the whole thing.
That's so cool.
And our project's due next week?
Not this project. The second musical and clef piece, which is whatever you've already done, the kinds of things you've already done vocally, as well as found sound.
So like objects.
Things that you can bring into the studio in order to make sound. Not a recording that you made somewhere else, but something that you can bring into the studio and record with a microphone. Right?
What about iPhone? What about the
No
phone?
phones.
No phone.
No phone usage, please. Right? So I've got all of these options here. Right? I can change this all around here. I can also change it by scaling it here, right? As well as it coming here. And I can change the speed of it
Which one?
by using the period.
Okay.
But in addition to that, I also have something called pulse length. Right? So the pulse length is actually coming from the internal knob here, but I'm not actually using it yet. What if I take the pulse length and I actually take that same pulse out and I come over here and I use that? So now I have this repetitive thing because every time this is hitting, it's actually giving a certain percentage. Sorry. Right, so notice you're on repetitive for the mode. You could be on single and then just step your way through them.
Oh wow. Like a manually trigger.
So is that how you get more specific rhythms? Or could you program them?
No, you can program a bunch of different things. I'll show you in a sec. Right, so here, let's put me back on repetitive. And you know what? I want some of the notes to be long and some of the notes to be short.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cable and come out of row B. Right? So this center row here, and I'm going to put that into the pulse. Well, actually, let's put that into the period. Right? And now I'm going to be able to use this row in order to control how long it is before the next note triggers.
Oh, wow.
Right?
So
If I flip this switch.
Whoa. Oh, wow.
Right? So that's controllable. But I could also take row C and come out and go into the pulse length, and now I could control what percentage of the distance between each pulse is actually heard. In other words, is it a 16th note or is it a quarter note between this pulse and that pulse? So now this one is much shorter. Right here, now it's a longer sound. Right, and I just hit this, which now just changed everything because it actually sent out new voltages through these two guys, going here and going there. And what if I use this last row also?
So sick.
What if I use this last row to also then change maybe the timbre?
So that goes to shape. Okay.
And I'm going to do something else, which is I'm going to make it so that the cable, I'm going to switch this over to stop and start. Okay, and I'm going to make it, I've got 8, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8. I'm going to make it so that that guy, whenever I hit 8, it's going to stop.
Oh.
And I'm going to make it so that whenever I hit the trigger here, it's actually going to start. So when I choose a note here, it'll start the sequence.
And it goes to 8.
And it stops at 8. And I can just keep hitting the same one, and I get the same pattern over and over again.
not stopping.
What do you mean going?
Like.
Oh, because the bass doesn't actually go through an envelope, does it?
Oh, right here.
So we never. Okay, so it's never routed.
So the bass is actually.
No, we
coming from...
went directly into an output,
Okay.
right? Into the mixer and out.
Oh.
So there's no. We could do that, and we
yeah,
could
let's
have
put
it
in
be a
that too.
different level. So instead of going there, we could take it into the input here, and then take that and go into where it was.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And now we should be able to, right? If we have it all the way up like that, we've got full sound all the time, right? But if we turn it down, then we can get attacks. Where do we want our attack from?
Do more attack generator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. But what do we want to actually trigger this envelope generator?
Key press,
Or-
right?
I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
Okay.
Let's put in that here.
We could make it so that maybe it only triggers off of this.
What was that?
Oh, you know what we could do too is we could make it so it only triggers off of every other one of them, not every one. And so and let's make sure that we're on, it's going to go off the trigger length, or let's do it so it's internal. All right, so it's not taking this length, it's taking the internal length here, whereas the other one is taking this length.
What about if you didn't hit the 8 and you pressed another key, so it will start from the beginning?
If I don't get to 8?
Yeah. So it will goes to.
So it changes.
Oh.
It goes up to 8 until it stops.
Okay.
Right? But I could easily just do that.
Yeah. Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I could also do is I could take maybe something like this, or actually let's do this first. I'm going to take this, which is actually a white noise generator, and I'm going to put that into here. And then I'm going to take the output of the white noise generator, and I'm going to take output at 125 cycles, and I'm going to put that into the first unit here. I'm going to take the output from 500 cycles and put that into here, and the output from 2000 and put it here, right? And then I'm going to take the, I need another longer guy, and take the output of 8K and go in maybe here. And now I'll take the output from here, right? And I'm going to go into my center knob there, and I'm going to take the output from here and go into my center knob here. So now when I turn these guys up, I now have an interesting little seashore.
That's crazy.
Or if it was up louder, it could be rain.
When
No way.
Right? So you've got an octave formant filter. Each one of these is a different octave, right? But you've also got a bandpass filter, right? So you got 4 different bands that will do, which is, you know, not as defined as that. It's a broader area. So there's noise there, but there's also another noise generator here, right? So you could use this guy and go into here and come into 2 of the others, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
A lot of stuff.
Right? There's also, you could take the signals once you're dealing with them and go into the, where'd it go? Well, there's a ring modulator, right? So you go in here, put 2 signals, and one of them modulates the other in terms of frequency. There's an equalizer over here. There is a filter here, which is a sharp cutoff filter, right, which has lots of options for it. There are, as I said, 4 more oscillators here. We're only using 2 oscillators, right? What might be interesting is to take the other oscillator, or the other frequency setup from here, and let's take A and B, and we'll go over into these 2 different units here, and then let's take the output of each of those, and we're going to go into our other inputs here, which are the bottom 2 inputs. All right. And now we're going to set it up so that the sequencer runs here, right? And it's on repetitive, and it's going to, let's make it go to 7 also. It's a different 7, but, oh, that one went to 8. And now we can flip these. And we could change the speed.
it's crazy.
It's not connected to anything.
Right.
And instead of going directly over there with these, we could actually use this row in order to control, right? Send out from row C to here, so that you're actually controlling the volume of those individual channels. Not bad, huh?
That's
Pretty sick.
You see this kind of thing in the movies, and you're like, "There's so many cables. There's no way that's how that actually works." And then you get,
but it is.
That's how it works. Go look at a movie called I Dream of Wires.
I was seeing that.
It's
It's great. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like
Where'd you watch it on?
it's on Netflix.
Netflix.
Or it used to be.
How many banana plugs can you banana plug into each other before you deal with signal degradation?
You're not dealing with signal degradation. What you're doing is you're adding voltages to each other.
So you don't even. Oh. So you don't even have to worry about that
No, it's not an audio signal.
because it's just voltage.
Yeah.
So you could just have them like plugged into each other, like.
So you could take this guy and plug this guy into there,
I should find out. Look at this.
right? But you could then take that same guy and plug it into
Like the rhythms you could do.
here as well,
7, 8,
right?
3, 4.
And then you could take that same guy and add it into what you had over on this processor, right? And then you could take another one from, that's not long enough.
So this is based on the same principle that the music for Forbidden Planet was
Well,
composed with.
it wasn't like
I
this.
mean, it wasn't nearly as advanced, but it's just voltages. Kind of.
In that case, it's circuits, right? So it's like what's behind here,
Yeah.
but they would build a circuit that said, okay, so, here's a filter, here's, I'm adding an extra capacitor into it, or whatever, here's an extra resistor,
Yeah.
and now what does it do? Right? Give it some voltage, and but they recorded that. So now they can take that piece of tape and use it in various ways.
Okay. That makes
Right, so you could just keep going, and the nice thing about these plugs is that not only can you jump into that part, but you can also go in here, right? So you can actually run that and go somewhere else. It's like, I'm already in there. So you could take this and go, oh, let me take that output and go over here so it sets the period, right?
K.O.
That's fantastic.
Now, the other interesting thing is that you could have these two different sequencers going, not being controlled there, right? But just having a repetitive exact thing. And because one of them is on 7 and the other one is on 8, it's going to take 8 times 7 before they come back around, provided they're being run off the exact same pulse, right? But if they're running off of different pulses and they're different lengths as well, God knows how many different permutations you would have before you got back to the same two notes together, right? So you don't have to think of this as being, oh, this is one frequency and that's another frequency and that's another frequency. You can think of it as this is the frequency, and then this is the timbre, and then this is the timing, or this is the frequency, this is the period, and this is the note length within the period.
It's all entirely.
It is whatever you want it to be, right? The one thing that Mort said, I heard him say yesterday in his other class, was, gee, I wish I had included more of these, because there's so many more things we could have done with them if we had more.
Mm-hmm.
But, so, who's the guy that teaches the other class?
Mort Sabatnik.
And he's the guy that made this?
Well, he didn't make it.
Well,
He's the one who said, I want a performance instrument, and I want that instrument to be able to do X, Y, and Z.
And then, who actually built the Buchla?
Don Buchla.
Built it.
Right.
That's.
He actually put an ad in the paper. He had $500 that he got from the Rockefeller Foundation,